Hello guys and girls, how's it going? Screezilla here and I hope you're all well. And today we're going to be looking at HMAS Vampire. Now HMAS Vampire was a destroyer, one of the V-class destroyers of the Royal Navy. She later was put into the Australian Navy. Originally HMS Wallace, back in 1917, just after the start of the First World War. So this is a very old design destroyer. It's been modernised slightly. We've got pretty much the last iteration of the ship in World of Warships. But I'm going to have a little look at it today and have a little look at some gameplay and a little bit of a talk about its history. So this is it here. Now, this is a premium ship you can purchase, I believe, but also it's a reward ship, so there's a mission going on where you could win it in the mission, and that's what I did. It's a pretty nice looking little destroyer. It's nice to actually have a British destroyer because there's not many in the game. We have Campbellton, of course, which is an American destroyer technically, which served for Britain, which is a bit of an interesting destroyer to play with. It's more of a torpedo using destroyer. The gunboat facility is not great because you only have 3 guns on it. I think it was originally based off the Clemson class? I'm trying to think now. Wicks. There we go. I think it was the Wicks class destroyer originally. Or was it the Clemson? No, it was the Wicks, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the Wicks class. I'm pretty sure it was the Wicks class. Or it might have been the Clemson. Anyway, let's just quickly check that. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm having one of those nights. Might have been the Clemson. But basically, a very old destroyer design. You know, they're very similar in their design. Sort of. I think they were. What about 1919, so you know, old destroyer in terms of destroyers, and it's a rank 3 destroyer, so it's the same rank as the Vampire. So these are your sort of World War I era destroyers, and they do look very different to your World War II era destroyers, which are much bigger and, you know, much more modern in their design, like the Kid and things like that. They have a much more modern look to them. They look like a warship that you would expect, whereas these older fashioned destroyers, they look a little bit well, they look a bit old, really, don't they? That's the best way to put it. So, where am I? There we go, Vampire. So let's just actually switch over to proper video image. Sorry about that. So yeah, so the Vampire. Now, the Vampire is more of a gunboat. Tier 3, sort of, you use it more like an American destroyer. It's that sort of guns over torpedoes. One reason is they only have 3 torpedo tubes. Now, they're not a bad reload speed, but they're not great. 6 kilometers is not bad at this tier, and then they're not too slow, but they're not great, in all honesty. You're going to be more reliant on the guns on this thing, which you do have some good guns on there. Now, you've got the 102mm guns on there, and you've got 4 of those. So you've got 2 at the front and 2 at the back. Pretty standard design. Now, you have relatively good anti-aircraft defense as well. I mean, you know, for a destroyer of this tier. One odd thing, though, is you've got the Italian Breda machine guns. So you've got the 13.2mm Breda machine guns in tandem. Now, I don't think this is historically true because I believe it actually carried Vickers, but there was a refit in Malaya in about 1941 in Malaysia where she had some different bits added to her, so it might have had the Bradas fitted then. It also had its torpedo tube. It did have a secondary torpedo, triple torpedo tube installed on her, which was also removed, so we only got the one on this one. Now, you've also got the 20mm, which is based here, so sort of close range sort of defense is pretty good, and you've also got a twin 40mm. So the twin 40mm guns here So it's got relatively okay AA defense. I've actually taken a couple of planes down with it, so that's okay. Concealment maneuverability is awesome on this ship. Survivability, as you imagine, is not great. There's barely any armour on her at all. If we just switch to the armour viewer, as you see, 6mm plating the majority of the ship, 10mm around the important stuff, and it's 3mm to get done. I mean, it's not going to stop anything really. It's very thin armour. Okay, well, let's go into a battle. And hopefully this works for us. We'll just switch this over. And let's try that again. Hopefully this will work now. And you might hear some thunder outside very shortly because we're going to have a storm appearing any minute now. Okay, there we go, and we're back. Alright, I could cut that, but I'm probably not going to because I'm lazy. So, V-Class Destroyer HMAS Vampire, sorry. She was a member of the Australian Royal Navy when she comes to terms. Now, there's a bit of service history with this ship. When she first came in under HMS Wallace, she was christened the Vampire later in sort of 1917, as the V-Class became a thing, really. She was loaned to the Royal Australian Navy in 1933 and operated as a depot tender until just before World War II. Reactive to war service, the destroyer served in the Mediterranean as part of what was commonly called the Scrap Iron Flotilla, and was escorting British warships Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse during their losses to Japanese aircraft in the South China Sea. So it was the Admiralty V-Class Flotilla destroyer back when it was made in 1916. It started production. Originally there was to be a few differences in design between the V-Class leaders and the rest of the V-Class destroyers, but in order to save time designing the destroyers, changes were limited to the layout of the bridge and accommodation areas. Vampire's displacement was 1,188 tons. She was 312 feet long and 29 feet and 6 inches wide. Now, the main arm was the 4-inch 101mm or 101.6mm guns, and that was supplemented by 2-pounder guns as well. She also had the twin Lewis guns, as I mentioned, as well, and Vickers 303 guns. She had 4 tube sets initially, and this was replaced by the 3 tube set, as I said, when she was recommissioned and refitted. Now, on her Royal Navy service, she was part of the 4th Destroyer Flotilla after the end of World War I, and she basically saw the action around the Mediterranean. So when she was transferred to the Royal Australian Navy, they were replacing 5 S-class destroyers. So the Vampire, along with her 3 sister ships of the V-class destroyer Vendetta, Voyager, and Waterhen, was selected for loan to the Australian flotilla. Now, she was sent there until about 1938, I think it was. She was sort of used as a tender, and she was really decommissioned. But she was on reserve until May 1938, when she was recommissioned for full service. Her World War II career was mainly in the Mediterranean and the Asian Pacific regions. Um, she operated in Australian waters until the start of World War II, and on October the 14th, 1939, joined her sister ships, and that's where the fantastic name of the Scrap Iron Flotilla came, as they were deployed to the Mediterranean theatre. She arrived in April 1940. Vampire was primarily assigned to convoy escort duties between Malta and Marseille. The destroyer operated as an escort and an anti-submarine patrol ship from the end of April, and escorted British aircraft carriers HMS Eagle during the Battle of Calabria on 8th of July. The only damage sustained by Vampire was the result of a near miss and splinters from an Italian aircraft bombing the Eagle. Sadly, a Royal Navy torpedo gunner on the Vampire became the first Royal Australian Navy casualty of the Second World War due to splinter wounds from the bomb. So that was the first Royal Australian naval casualty in Second World War, which is kind of an interesting thing to have on her. Now you see here we've flanked around, we found the enemy aircraft carrier. Me and this Clemson here, we've just absolutely outfoxed the enemy here, and we are gonna lick our lips. So the Vampire operated as one of the Tobruk ferry services during the attack on Tobruk, and then after that she set sail for Singapore, where she had to go for some major repairs, which lasted until late 1941. So some torpedoes just go off there from the Clemson. He's actually firing over at one of the enemy ships behind us. I am very focused on this aircraft carrier. I want to try and get it out as quick as possible, get it out of the game, because aircraft carriers are a pain in the bum sometimes. So if there's no escort vessels around this ship, we've really caught them off guard. There's one cruiser back here, so this carrier is really in some deep trouble. Now torpedoes dropped, a nice torpedo drop, but a little bit too just a little bit too soon. As you see there, the shots come in from the Kuma there, and I take a big hit and do damage my steering gear, and luckily I've got my last stand activated, so I am safe. Fire off a spread of torpedoes there. Now, one of the interesting things with this ship, because it is a British destroyer, is you can do single torpedo spreads, so you don't have to launch all at the same time. So as you notice there, I just spread my torpedoes a little bit narrow. I was hoping to get a couple more hits, but I only get the one on the bow of the ship. Caused some flooding there. She's on fire as well. Miss Langley is not looking good. A couple more torpedoes come in, and that is the end of that ship. Now, the Kuma there is going to cause some problems, so I'm going to start firing on that. While I'm in the smoke screen, I might as well try and get some HE off. Now, the friendly Clemson is down. I believe he got absolutely schwacked by somebody. He took a bit of a hammering as we were coming over here as well. So, in December 1941, she joined the British Eastern Fleet in Ceylon. In the first week of December, the battlecruiser HMS Repulse started on a trip to Australia with Vampire and HMS Tendos as escort, but was forced to recall. Early in the morning of the 8th of December, Singapore time, Singapore came under attack from Japanese aircraft, setting some nice fires here, and I am getting hit pretty hard. After receiving reports on the attack of Pearl Harbor and the invasion of Siam by Japanese forces, Force Z, which was part of Vampire's force, consisting of Prince of Wales, Repulse, escorted by Vampire, Electra Express, and Tendos, put to sea at 1700 hours on December the 8th. Admiral Phillips cancelled the operation and ordered the force to return to Singapore. On the way back, they were spotted and reported by Japanese submarine I-58. Getting absolutely hammered here by that cruiser, so I'm going to try and get behind the island to get some safety here. On December the 10th, they received reports of Japanese landings at Kuantan, and Express was sent to investigate the area. Finding nothing that afternoon, Prince of Wales and Repulse were attacked and sunk by 85 Japanese aircraft off Kuantan by aircraft from the 22nd Air Flotilla based at Saigon. Vampire rescued 225 of the ship's 2,081 survivors from the sea and transported them to Singapore. On the 26th of January 1942, following reports that an unescorted group of Japanese troop ships was sailing near Malaya, near Endua, Malaya, Vampire and HMAS Vampire were ordered to intercept. Reaching the Japanese convoy at 0200 the next morning, the two destroyers found the troop ships, which were protected by cruiser Sendai and 6 destroyers. The Allied destroyers tried to escape. Vampire was successful, but Fant was sunk. On the 11th of February, Vampire was attached to an Eastern Fleet force operating in the Indian Ocean. At the start of April, Vampire was ordered to escort British aircraft carrier HMS Hermes from Ceylon, as Japanese presence in the area would become dominant. And that was her last proper mission. Following the Japanese fast carrier task force attack on Colombo in early April, Hermes and Vampire were ordered to depart Tremalcale to avoid follow-up strikes. Sailing on the 8th of April, the two ships avoided aerial bombing of the port early in the next morning, but were spotted and attacked by Japanese aircraft at 10:35 a.m. Hermes was lost within 20 minutes, and after the aircraft left, those aboard Vampire thought they had been spared. However, the aircraft had returned to the carriers for rearming and returned to bomb Vampire heavily. Vampire shot down at least one aircraft before breaking in half and sinking. Her ensign the last to submerge. Despite the ferocity of the attack, Vampire's commanding officer and 8 sailors were the only fatalities. The survivors from both Hermes and Vampire were recovered by the hospital ship Vita. And that's the end of the Vampire story. So, how is she in the game? Well, Vampire's pretty fun, I would say, for a low-tier destroyer. It's nothing special, though. It really... I don't know, it's an okay boat, but it does suffer from being more of a gunboat than a torpedo boat, and that can really mess it up a bit. It's good if you can get in a position like this where you're firing and you're not under fire, but you really can't afford to take any hits, and that's kind of the truth for most destroyers. The torpedo reload's not too bad, but right here I was sort of relying on some teammates for assistance in spotting, and kind of lost the Clemson there, and then the friendly cruiser decided to get out very quickly, and I didn't notice the cruiser sneaking up behind me because I was rather focused on this South Carolina here. As I said, it's not a terrible ship though. It's one of my favourite low-tier destroyers for sure. And as you've seen, you know, you're able to cause quite a lot of damage. What are we at the moment? We're almost at 40,000 damage, which really isn't bad. You know, it's not a bad little effort for Tier 1 for sure. We've had one torpedo hit, of course, which does bolster the damage quite a bit, but the rest of the damage has been caused by fire and shots. And as you see here, we've got over 100 shots out with our guns. Now, I was just sort of sitting here capping, and as I said, I didn't notice that destroyer creeping up on me. Sorry, the cruiser creeping up on me from behind. So, 30 hit points is left, and, well, crap. Now, I should have really gone forwards here instead of reversing, but I sort of panicked and reversed, and Kuma there is going to be on me very soon, and unfortunately he's going to notice those torpedoes. A little bit late though, as one goes straight through the front, which is kind of good news, but the South Carolina opens up a massive salvo to my left, and that's the end of me. Now, I ended up winning this game, so I ended up getting 55,000 points of damage, which is pretty damn good in all honesty. I was pretty happy with that. And yeah, that's really the game. So, it's just finishing up here. Anyway, I'm going to end the video there. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will catch you next time. This is Screezilla out. Bye-bye.